Hi, everybody. Welcome to Customer Conversations with BlueGator. So, Tyler, hey, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your role at Morey's Piers, and how you guys came into Salesforce and how you've been using it.
Yeah, so I've been with Morey's for 10 years now. I'm currently the director of guest engagement and analytics, which basically touches on all of our guest communications and the guest experience from, the purchase process through, the time you go home and get that survey. As far as our experience with Salesforce, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago, we started to look for something to enhance our guest communication directly. So the back and forth when our guests email us or when they call in, a better way to log that, track those conversations, and connect the dots between the experiences they were having on site and what questions were being asked. From there, we grew into Marketing Cloud. We worked with a handful of implementation partners throughout the process, but none of them really understood the nuances of the industry and really our business. And that's when we came across you guys at BlueGator and have been working together ever since.
Got it. And how did you guys end up finding us? Do you remember at all? I can't quite remember either.
I think a colleague, Tim, who was our director of marketing at the time, we had made a connection at IAPA through, our previous companies. I think you may have pinged him on LinkedIn and Tim followed up and that was history.
The power of LinkedIn. Yes. Yeah, that's exactly
Yeah.
how that worked. So like what you guys had went through a little bit of a cycle with on the Marketing Cloud side with a couple implementation partners and things like that. And, and we kind of jumped in and we helped a little bit with Marketing Cloud, but we also helped connect some of your systems. So it'd be great if you could talk about from your perspective, like what were some of the challenges that you guys were having just from a systems perspective and having sort of, trying to connect everything and ultimately enhance the guest experience, like you mentioned earlier.
Yeah. So at the time we had a handful of disparate systems from our, database software to Service Cloud to Marketing Cloud and multiple points of sales. None of them, they talk to each other a little bit, but nothing to the level that we're currently at. The challenges were sort of connecting those dots between your online purchase, your on-site purchase, that going into your account, logging through Service Cloud, and on my team in the field, who's sort of the guest service team, being able to see all of that communication, all of those purchases, all in one place. I think you like to refer to it as the single source of truth. And from there, we were able to tailor that to, create this strategy that's really been fantastic for us about getting the right message to the right guests at the right time. And, deploying that over the last couple of years has been very powerful for us.
So when we got into the first season, after we were able to sort of connect the systems and stuff like that, I love the feedback that Lee, one of your guest service folks, gave about the system and the capabilities from what it was doing to what it does now for your frontline operations. I'd love to just share a little bit about, kind of maybe what Lee said and why that was so impactful after we had hooked up all the systems.
Yeah, so Lee is our guest services manager. She's been with Morey's for over 50 years now. And as you can imagine, it's tough to sort of change some of Lee's habits and train new systems to her. But in this process, we used to have a guest that would come up and they would ask for help with a certain issue or ask for the discount that they heard about in their email, or a handful of other, guest experience things that we've all dealt with. And we used to have to jump into multiple different systems. Some of them weren't even accessible from, the guest services booth. So we would have to get back to the guests at a later date. And this was something that Lee, was trained on doing over 50 something years. So after, working with you guys to deploy, Service Cloud, Marketing Cloud, and connect all of these dots, we, this experience that you're talking about, Lee, for the first time, went into Salesforce and in one screen was able to see every transaction and conversation, both from marketing and from our team, that this person has had in over the last, however many years that we have logged in there. And it was all in one place, no jumping around, and we were able to service that guest right there on the spot, which of course blew her away because of what she was used to.
Right. Yeah. That's awesome. And a lot of times, a lot of venues will sort of recoil at the amount of work that they think is involved in connecting all these different systems. Like it seems like it's just an insurmountable task, like especially if you've got a ticketing system that doesn't have a published open accessible API and all sorts of things like that. Be great if you could share a little bit about, that journey in working with BlueGator and how hard it was to sort of where some of the bumps were, or what some of the challenges were on connecting those systems. Because we had a separate e-commerce system and a separate on-site ticketing system, and then obviously Service Cloud, and then connecting that to Marketing Cloud. But more about the systems of record to Salesforce, like what the experience was like in doing that.
Yeah, so part of what sort of took us so long to stand up some of these things were those issues. But through working with you guys, it was trying to think of how long it really took us before we were into it, but it was way easier than we, I think, had expected, which is why we didn't sort of take the project on before, but when we
Yeah.
connected with you guys, you organized it in a way that we could very easily understand, digest. You work directly with our, IT team, our data, our third party data team, our all kinds of teams, everybody from, the marketing folks through the IT side. And we sort of put all this together, and it wasn't, there was some bumps in the road, but we certainly got there, and it was much easier than we had anticipated for sure.
Yeah, and I think if I remember right, it was something like we had started February timeframe, but we had it ready to go for season. I remember that. And
Yeah, yeah.
so it wasn't like it took a year or anything like that. It was like, maybe 90
Yeah.
days and things like that. And, integrating with ticketing systems can be complex because the way that it's not just about how the transactions come in. Your operation is very unique for, the general attractions population. It'd be great if you could share a little bit about like what your operational model is versus like a typical theme park or zoo or something like that.
Yeah, so we don't have a gate open to the public. Everybody's welcome to come in, walk around, check things out, eat, drink, play games. Really, you pay to go buy the ride. You pay to get on the ride. So each ride has a scanner. It deducts a certain amount of tickets from your ticket card, which you buy at the ticket booth or you buy online, but gets redeemed at the ticket booth. Traditionally, there would be a gate. You'd pay once to get through. With that, it creates a lot of data points, which is great, but
Yeah.
there was a lot of dots to connect. And like you said, I think we were fully running as fast as we could in about 90 days. But I think one of the cool things was that some of these pieces were implemented in a much shorter time frame, which really got people like Lee and even me on board, because we got to see the product and we got to touch it and use it. And it was like, oh my God, this can do that. And then we started to run down the path of all of these new things that, we've now implemented this season.
Yeah.
So really, we're wrapping as we speak.
Yeah, and that's a great transition. So the first phase was we really kind of set up the infrastructure and getting everything connected to enable, folks like Lee in the field. But then once we had a central identity for a guest, we knew that this is TJ Christensen and all of his transactions and things like that. How did being able to then push that into Marketing Cloud as you went into your Oktoberfest event and your winter sales event and things like that? How did that affect your ability to target, segment folks, and generally what the business results were of those programs compared to what they were in the past?
Yeah, so we went from 0 to 100 really with that. We would previously target folks by did you purchase or did you not purchase. We sort of worked through this through Oktoberfest, the end of last season, but really the big sort of light bulb moment was during our winter sale, which takes place Thanksgiving through the first week of the new year.
Yeah.
And we were really able to target guests by what they purchased in the past or they didn't purchase in the past. Water park, were they ticket cards, were they season pass holders, when they purchased, where they lived, you name it. We were able to segment and sort of approach them with this tailored message. And it sort of goes back to this idea of the right guest, the right message at the right time. And that was incredibly powerful. I want to say our winter sale was up something like 38-40%, which really just blew everybody away. So
yeah. Yeah, I love the comment. Someone made the comment that like the executive team didn't believe the results. and someone's like, check the bank
Yeah,
account,
we
like the
ran
reports match the reconciliation.
we
So
ran those reports a couple times for sure.
right.
So
Yeah. Did we get a windfall from the bank or what? Yeah.
right, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that sort of that success sort of led to a litany of more projects that came up in working with you guys, and like a handful of projects. I think we had, a group sales project that we did, and I'll turn it over to you in a second. We did a group sales project. We worked in conjunction with another one of your vendors to do a digital wallet, knowledge base, digital engagement, and now sort of really focusing on ROI driven marketing journeys for this next season. Tell me a little bit about, like, because we when we're out talking to folks, we often say, like, what we try to do is we try to focus on what high value wins are going to be for the organization, so they feel the momentum. And everyone's asking, well, how did we do more of that? Like, that worked really well, let's do more of that. Where can we go find things to execute against? And it'd be great if you could share a little bit about maybe what some of those conversations were internally at Morey's, and how some of those projects sort of came to fruition or became now possibilities because of what had happened over the last 6-8 months with connecting all your systems.
Yeah, so it's hard to argue against 40%, plus 40%. So with that, we had already started to work on this, implementing the Salesforce CRM with our group sales team, which created an integration between accounting and another quick fun story was that our accounting manager came in the other day and let us know that she like ran into a meeting that we were in the middle of and said, you guys aren't going to believe this. I did something that would have taken me days in 30 minutes
Yeah.
in reconciling some of these reports.
Yeah.
So that was another big win for us. And, that momentum has since carried through into this preseason where we just wrapped building out a knowledge base, which has been super helpful to our guests. Our call volumes are sort of down in a good way, meaning guests are finding the answers that they're looking for without really needing to touch on our team, which means our team can focus on the guests who are here. With that came an automated chat. We also use this, sort of single source of truth to build a digital wallet outside of our point of sale systems that is super simple, but has been super effective. We've had, some great pickup from that. Lots of guests are using it, and more to come as we enter one of the busiest weekends of the season here.
What are you most excited about in the next, so this season, we're starting to do more like real-time activations on guests and things like that. So if you could just talk a little bit about, some of the things we're looking to do from an SMS perspective, email perspective, based on visitation and being in venue and stuff like that, and what the organization's thoughts are around some of those initiatives.
Yeah, so this momentum of sort of, of course, like I think anybody in our industry is going to say that it's the guest first, right? We want to make sure that they have the best experience possible. One of the things that's always sort of held marketing back a little bit is our ability to communicate these intricacies of our business, which I explained earlier, around some of these promos. And we were always a little nervous of, if we put this out, this person might not get the right message and we might miss somebody. And that always held us back. But now that we've really built this foundation of this, knowledge, for lack of a better term, it's sort of opened the door up to do a lot more and try a lot more. So this season, we are working as we speak to roll out text opt-in so that our guests can, get text messages as they redeem a ticket. They might get a text about a promo or some other offer that is truly interesting to them. It's going to be about the restaurant at the location that they're at, not just a general restaurant somewhere on the property. They will get messages to upgrade their tickets, things that are truly meaningful for our guests, which I think will drive a better guest experience, but also will, of course, help with revenue if we can get more people to purchase more.
Yeah, I think that's what gets us most excited. It's like, that's the really fun stuff.
Right.
How can you, in a positive way, how can you enhance the guest experience and sort of shift guest behavior based on what you know about them in real time in the venue, right? Like, we know this person's played games before, midway games. They just rode this roller coaster. Let's send them a message to give them a midway game, something or other,
Exactly.
Things like that. So
Exactly.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really cool when we get it all done.
Yeah. So, which is really crazy to think coming from, like I said before, where we were, before we sort of engaged on this. And these were, I wouldn't even say that we were dreaming about doing these things. We didn't even know that these things could be done
Right.
at the level that we're executing them at. So,
Yeah, and I think that's that's one of the things that we talk a lot about to folks is, you know, it's not that it's easy, it's just easier than you thought it was. And you got to know where to look, and you also need to be really focused around what to do. I remember when we did our initial discovery with the executive team, one of the concerns that they talked about was, we're worried that we're going to get distracted from shiny objects. And I think what we've done over the
mhm,
past, I don't know, it's only a year and a half, um,
mhm.
is really focus in on, okay, it's system architecture and making sure everything's tied in together. It's then, okay, what are some quick wins now that we have everything pulled together? And then it's, guest experience, and make sure that those things are ROI driven and not necessarily just, whiz bang features that might be cool. It's like, hey, there's going to be an ROI associated with this that we're going to be able to measure, which I think is really exciting. And what we try to do is give, uh 60 feet of business value for every 1 inch of technical lift. Like, we try to, that's a made up ratio, but obviously, but that's what we try to do, is like not boil the ocean, just be really focused.
It's one of those things. And like you said, we had that meeting. We had, all the executives together, the directors, everybody, all the stakeholders that were going to be sort of touched by this project. Um, and that was certainly a concern, but I think, to speak to you and the team at BlueGator, you guys sort of kept us on track, kept us on focus every step of the way, more so than I couldn't have imagined doing on our own. Which led to these things. There was we had that low hanging fruit. We were able to, see a purchase directly in Service Cloud, but with that was sort of the base to build this other stuff along the way, which sort of kept us coming back looking for more,
Yeah.
and built this really, really fantastic, thing right now.
Yeah. And so, as we sort of wrap up, like, what advice would you give to hospitality brands or venues that maybe, you know, where you were 2 years ago, right? Or even further, before you even put in Service Cloud, and because you had Service Cloud and Marketing Cloud already, but even sort of maybe even pre that, or while you had those things and just kind of like we're kind of using the tools but not necessarily leveraging them.
I think two things, and we touched on one of them a little bit, and it's that it's not as hard as maybe it seems. It's about, finding the right partner and really getting them to understand what it is that your business needs. Not almost really what we're trying to do, because I think at one point we were trying to do something that we probably didn't need. We were looking for those cool features, but we didn't have the foundation to do it. And that's
Mm.
sort of, where you guys stepped in and helped us build that. The other thing that I think, thinking back to my experience, I remember when, Tim, colleague I mentioned earlier, was sort of talking about, hey, we need to get into this Salesforce world. Everybody sort of looked at the price tag and, gasped and,
Yeah.
almost didn't do it. And then as these things started to work, we started to see those returns. And now, our CFO might not like that I'm going to say this, but he sort of makes the joke that, man, I would write that check any day.
Yeah.
Because we're now getting a return. So I think there's something to be said about, yes, it takes a little bit to get in. I don't know if it needs to be as robust off the bat as maybe we did it. But it's certainly worth the investment and the time.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Yeah, and it's one of those things that what I get excited. There's always more to come, right? There's more cool stuff that Salesforce is pushing out every quarter, acquisitions that they're making and things like that. So there's always,
Yeah, yeah.
there's always something new to leverage, or a new tool, or something like that. So Tyler, when we were connecting systems, a lot of times duplicates and data hygiene are a big problem, especially with ticketing companies, because ticketing companies are really focused on transactional speed and high volume and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things that they don't necessarily do really well is identity resolution. So oftentimes when we engage with ticketing systems and databases, there's, if I've been to your venue 12 times, there's 12 unique TJ Christensens. I may have one or two different email addresses. Maybe my home address is the same, but they're not sort of collapsing or doing any deduplication on that. And that was a concern going into this, is that we were pushing high volumes of data into Salesforce. Can you talk a little bit about how we how Morey's managed that, and what tools you used and what some of the results have been?
Yeah, so that was certainly a big issue. It's been an issue for us for a long time. We've been using the same point of sale for upwards of 15, pushing 20 years, I believe. And it's even more so an issue in speed on the team's end in the field, where a guest comes up and they might not even ask. So the TJ might be in the system, but they just create him again because that's the quickest way to do it in the scenario. So that did create lots of duplicates, giant amount of records in the database related, and it was preventing us from sort of talking to the guests directly. So we joined with a company called 7AI. They sort of run this duplicate checking for us through their AI software, and that allows us to combine a lot of these accounts, for lack of a better term, which has now given us the ability to talk directly to the guest. So rather than saying dear guest or just hi, we can say, hey TJ, here's a message specifically for you, because we know that we're talking to you and we don't have all of this sort of clutter in the database that is a waste. So that's been super powerful, very helpful.
Yeah, because that's the fear, right? You're going to send an email to somebody with the wrong first name in it, or you'll send the Winterfest or the winter sale email to 10 TJs, right?
Yeah, or our digital wallet is, a way to click a link and get to your season pass directly and upload your picture and add it to your account. If we send your season pass link to the wrong TJ, we could have a problem.
Yeah, that's a problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to make sure you got the right one for that one, for sure.